Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 940. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today's November 4th, 2025.
All right, welcome to another episode of Anglican Unscripted. We're glad you could join us. Before we get too far in the episode, this is where it's a great time just to pause, look on your screen, click that like button. That helps us out. If you're not subscribed, you'll see a little red rectangle there. Click on that. Click the bell. It will give you instant notifications every time there's a new episode of Anglican Unscripted. The real things happen after the show in the comment section. So after the episode, if you're not watching this live, go to the comment section and give us your opinion on the stories that we're talking about. Lots of news today. If who ever thought Anglican news could provide enough content for a weekly podcast, George? That's so strange. So how are you doing this week, George?
Winter's here, Kevin. It's freezing. If it was at least 60 degrees this morning. I mean, I had to cover up the plants. The dogs and the cats all got in bed with me this morning. We've have our season change. Winter here lasts about 3 weeks in November, and then the spring comes. So this is the hard time. So we'll get through this, I'm pretty sure.
I hope so, because 61 is the high today here in Sullivan, Maryland. So, it's all about perspective. Right now, the lawns crew's out there getting the leaves up. So if you see some traffic behind, maybe you'll see it in the window. They're picking up the leaves because that's what they do. All right, let's move on to the news stories. We've got a full episode. We could do a 4-hour episode today, George, if we really wanted to get into the weeds. But let's start off with the Board of Inquiry has began its review of the presentment of Bishop Derek Jones, and will recommend whether or not to go to trial in December.
Yes. The Board of Inquiry of the Anglican Church in North America is that body tasked with investigating charges against a bishop after a presentment has been received. Now, the ACNA's rules say that this information must all be kept confidential. So they will not tell us who is on this Board of Inquiry, who is reviewing this, nor will we see a copy of the presentment. Only if it is made public and a presentment is issued will we see some of the documentation. We know that December 15th is a hard deadline because that's the day that the Stuart Rook materials need to be finished. And they're going to have the Jones things done by then so that if they do go to trial, that process will start immediately. Now, you and I have been in touch with many and most of the principals in this case, both victims, bishops, so on and so forth. And frankly, it's
a complicated, very complicated case. And instead of saying victims, we'll say accusers. Just I don't keep the lawyers out of this,
Okay. Well, the issue is that what is being alleged against Jones is Jones either, if you listen to, how should I say this, Kevin? In my opinion, knowing full well that I am judgment proof, I have nothing except the books on the shelf in back of me if you want to sue me. Jones's accusers believe he's psychotic. And they also believe there's a demonic element in all of this. And they have provided evidence in the forms of emails, documentations, letters from 2-star generals in the Army to verify their version of events that shows that it is alleged that Jones engaged in a pattern of deceitful conduct towards the ACNA. The jurisdiction of the armed forces and chaplaincy never really was in the ACNA. The ACNA thought it was, but it wasn't. It was part of the Church of Nigeria. Jones tried to keep his foot in both camps. That Jones, if somebody crossed him, would engage in an action of behavior that it is alleged was cruel, vindictive, dishonest. Hiring private investigators to trash people. Hiring private investigators to investigate other bishops in the ACNA who spoke to him when somebody came to him with a concern, it is alleged. I've not seen the canceled checks. And so I'm just repeating what I have been told. Now, of course, we've contacted Jones's attorneys after they were all, oh, you need to talk to us. Not a peep since then. Not a peep since then.
Well, no, they got back to us a couple times, but when we did follow up.
But once we started getting, okay, here's the smoking gun. Tell us, and here are the fingerprints. Are these your client's fingerprints? Okay. Yeah.
So
being facetious. But the issue here, now I'm going to get a bit of commentary. Jones is out of the ACNA. Okay. He's done. He's gone. The task for the ACNA at this stage is to undo the damage done by Jones over the last 10 years. Address the emotional and spiritual need of the complainants. Restore trust in the bishops of the ACNA. Right now, people are taking great delight, almost glee, in sending me, and I know you, Kevin, emails recounting how the ACNA essentially is North Korea at prayer. It's a dear leader type church.
Sure.
The people have no, in reaction to the crazy loons that run the Episcopal Church who are lay people, the ACNA went to the opposite extreme, cutting out the lay people from any real meaningful oversight. And the result is that you get a few bad bishops and it screws it up the other way.
Well, I mean, but that's the point that can be argued. How did the ACNA become so centric over here on having the bishops in control of everything and only they can judge themselves? Well, the Episcopal Church had done the opposite, and it can be largely argued the power of the laity destroyed the Episcopal Church. And so when the ACNA formed in 2008, they're like, listen, we don't want that to happen. We'll just take it over here and put it all in the hands of trusted bishops. Now, I remember sitting in the pews down in Plano, Texas, next to Mary Ailes, a blogger from
Falls Church, I think it was.
Yeah, and Baby Blue was her blogger name?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And she's like, Kevin, I don't like this. I said, what's wrong? The bishops should not have this much control. There should be shared partnership with the laity. Oh, and I'm like, no, these guys are golden. They'll never be a problem. Well, Mary Ailes, rest her soul, she passed on, was dead right. You can't let people who do not know when they are corrupted run a church. You have to be able to share the responsibility with the lay and clergy.
There's a great deal of also some biblical illiteracy and theological illiteracy at the very highest ranks of the ACNA's bishops. A favorite thing to trot out is Matthew 18. If there's a problem, they bring out this little thing, well, you need to speak to a person in private. You don't take it to outsiders, you this and that. Now, the actual official safeguarding manual for the ACNA says that's not what you do.
No.
You do not do that, except when it involves a bishop. Then the bishop's response is that as Ray Sutton is accused of telling a whistleblower, we have no whistleblowers. You cannot say bad things about a bishop and not expect it to come back and bite you. Ray Sutton denies having said this. However, we've seen documentation that Ray's memory may not all be what it should be. Will the ACNA fall apart? No, it will not.
Oh, that's no.
The gates of hell will not prevail. Does there need to be a house cleaning? Yes, there is. Does there need to be a rebalancing of the instruments of authority within the ACNA? Yes, there does.
Well, let's save some of our complaints for the next story, which will make more sense. But right now, I am pleased that stuff like this gets to the attention of the Washington Post. Let that be your wake-up call. Let that know that people who love the ACNA decided that they did not want a chance just taking this information to the bishops and go through a presentment. They knew that probably wouldn't take them anywhere. Based on recent evidence, I believe that it probably wouldn't have went anywhere either in the Washington Post or some large outlet, larger than Anglican Inc., was the place to take it. And so let this be a wake-up call. You ready to move on to the next story?
Yeah. Yeah, I think my response to all this is the need to get on my knees and pray for all involved. Mm-hmm. I pray that those who are bringing the complaints exercise prudence and compassion, and because if they send a 50-page diatribe about all the evils that ever occurred, Bishop Jones cut ahead of me in line to get ice cream, he ran over my dog, well, may be true, but it diminishes from the efficacy of a straightforward factual complaint. And remember, we're dealing with old men in the House of Bishops. Yeah, and if it's longer than a page, they're not going to turn it over.
No.
Okay? They're not going to turn over to the second page. So if you can't say it in one page, don't give it to them.
No, back in seminary, these bishops were page turners. They could do it all day long. This is not that time anymore. So,
and then the other thing is, there are some truly godly men in the Episcopal order of the ACNA who are being unfairly tainted by a few people who, for the lack of oversight, lack of background checks, lack of psychological checks, have crept in. And it's what I call the Charles Benison phenomena. Those of you who may know Episcopal history, he was my bishop when I started out in seminary, and I had all my grief with him, and it was Bob Duncan who rescued me. There were Bob Duncans in the Episcopal Church then, but there are a lot of Charles Benisons. And now we're seeing the ACNA having its own Charles Benisons, and Bob Duncan's retired.
Yeah. Well, I know.
Who will be the new Bob Duncan to stand for truth? And I was a nobody in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And Bob Duncan, then Bishop of Pittsburgh, basically took me under his wing out of the Diocese of Pennsylvania and fought Charles Benison over what was a point of principle and honor. I'd like to see somebody in the ACNA's College of Bishops do that too. Willing to make a public stance for what is right and true. Or maybe we only have one Bob Duncan a generation. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I mean, there's lots of different types of leaders, especially when it comes to bishops. You have the lambs who rightfully serve as peacemakers, as honorable, humble men of God. And you have lions who serve, obviously, a different role of keeping the church straight, in line, accountable. And I think we need to have more people stepping up to the accountability role. It should not just be Anglican Unscripted saying, "Hey guys, I think that's you're out of sorts right now. You should not have to come to Anglican Unscripted to find out how to do things right. That's wrong. That's ridiculous." So.
And I think you need to both ask us. We have no ulterior motive. Okay, we don't derive income from this. No, any money we may get from YouTube. Basically, every 3 or 4 years we'll get new microphones or something. We're not. There's no financial motive here. There's no theological motive. We're not out to get anybody. We're not seeking to hurt. We're old men. We've reached the stage of life where we've got left is our integrity, and that matters most of all to us. Sure. So we want to see the right thing being done in all situations.
Well, we also share the same concern. We want transparency. No
I've
church.
gotten a few emails from people saying, "Oh, because you're an Episcopal priest, how dare you comment on the ACNA?"
Okay.
Well, and my answer usually is I was there before you were.
That's right.
I was at Plano. I was at the what's that suburb of Fort Worth, where the cathedral is.
There's Dallas, Fort Worth, and I forget what it's called.
Where we had our first filming together, and one of us had toilet paper on our shoe, and Suzanne Gill.
That was Fort Worth. Yeah, that was
Fort Worth. But,
so that's how old we are. We can't remember where we met.
Yeah, except I remember one of us had toilet paper, but I can't remember who it was. But my point is, we've been there from the very beginning, and we want to see God's will be done.
We are also
We don't-
biased. Yeah, we're biased. We're God bias. We're ACNA bias. I want the ACNA to succeed. I have watched over the last 15 years it grow, it reach and transform lives of the laity, and transform lives of the cities and states and communities it's in. I am also a supporter of Steve Wood. I want the Archbishop of the ACNA to be a leader in the world. Okay, that's a bias I have. However, you have to do this with transparency, and you and I have made that call loud and clear for a long time. So let's move on to talk about Bishop Steve Wood, who put out a letter. Archbishop Steve Wood put out a letter yesterday saying he is going to step back, take a paid leave of absence while the outcome of this investigation is pending and moving along. I bet he hopes for a fast investigation.
Well, they got to get through Wood and Jones before they get to him.
Derek Jones, yeah.
Derek Jones and Stuart Rook and Derek Jones have to be done before they get to him, because there's only one board of inquiry, and these guys actually have day jobs too. So he's resigned as rector of St. Andrew's Church in Mount Pleasant. He stepped back as bishop of the Diocese of the Carolinas and Archbishop of the ACNA. There's been a lot of developments since what we reported last week, where the breaking story out of the Washington Post and things we reported of the three tracks of complaints. One, sexual harassment against Claire Buxton, a former youth minister.
Not against.
One, bullying.
From. Yeah.
Sexual abuse against Claire Buxton.
Okay.
Second, bullying of other staffers. Third, financial misconduct, shenanigans. Stuart Wood, I keep saying Steve Wood has denied the sexual misconduct completely. No truth to it whatsoever. And has not really addressed the bullying some of his friends and surrogates. Dave Roseberry, former rector of Plano, Christchurch Plano, said that, well, you know, there are some management styles that when you run a church of 2,500 people, you can't really be a pastor to everybody. You've got to get things done. So sometimes you're gruff, and sometimes you may not have the time to hold the hand of everybody who needs their hand held. You have to make things. So that may be true, it may not be true. Then the St. Andrew's chief operating officer made a dreadful mistake, PR mistake. She wrote a letter to the editor of the Washington Post, which the Washington Post published, which is unusual. Most 90% of letters, 99% of letters, just
not worth it.
Don't get anywhere. In response to Ian Shapira's article about Steve Wood, the chief operating officer upbraided him for the insinuation that there was something untoward in $3,500 being given from the discretionary fund to Claire Buxton. Now, you and I, Kevin, have come at this differently. You have a copy of the internal guidelines for St. Andrew's Mount Pleasant, which says that you only give money to people who ask for it. She never asked for it, yet she was given this money. Second, if you give this money from an employer to an employee, she was still an employee of St. Andrews. Even if it's from the discretionary fund, that must be reported on a W-2 as taxable income. You cannot just hand somebody money who's on your staff. Parishioner who's in need, a hobo at the door is in need, that's completely different. But somebody on your employee, your payroll, may not receive this extra money, and they may receive it, but it must be reported as taxable. And St. Andrews didn't do it. No. So here the way it, it's Like they get Al Capone on tax evasion. They get you on the financials and the simple stuff. And here we've got some straightforward, here's what the paperwork says. Here's what the transaction register shows. Did this comply with IRS tax code and St. Andrew's operating principles? The answer is no. Now, does this rise to being removed from office? No, I don't think so. It's just a bonehead mistake. They didn't know any better, and nobody seemed to have had the courage to say to the Archbishop, look, you can't do this because the IRS doesn't allow it. But when you add the sex stuff on top of it, what'll convict you?
The Washington Post will come in and cover that. They don't care about the financials at all, but the sex is going to sell the clicks. So
the sex will sell the clicks, and the insinuation. I mean, the chief operating officer was making a valid point. The insinuation is that this was a payoff to go away, to keep quiet. You just unwise to basically, no, I did not kill that man. You know, and then you're holding the gun with the smoke coming out of it. It's not a good look. Having been said,
that was amateurish to respond to the Washington Post. If you don't want to be in the news, don't respond to the news.
It looks, and this is unofficial, uncounted, is that it looks like Steve Wood is losing the confidence of the College of Bishops.
I'm sure since day one when the story broke at the Washington Post, there have been low-level and high-level discussions within the College of Bishops and the executive board and standing committees everywhere saying, you're going to have to step away. You have to take a leave because of just how it looks. We cannot have the Archbishop of the ACNA under an investigation while you're still in power, while you're still the Archbishop. Let's find a way to have you step aside, paid. We'll do it paid, no big deal, and have Ray Sutton step in. He's the dean. Have somebody else help back him up. I understand.
Julian Dobbs.
Julian Dobbs. Bob Duncan's kind of still working in the background here too. And so, we can deal with this. However, can we have, after we just watched what happened with Bishop Ruck, can we have an honest presentment of the Archbishop? An honest trial? Are we able to do that? I don't know.
I'm not convinced that, I'm sure that people will want it to be, but the perception being left is that we follow the rules that are convenient for us. In other words, the ACNA's office has said nothing about the Derek Jones or Derek Jones won't tell us a word, saying we can't because we're not allowed to. But then they tell us, they answer the same question about Steve Wood. So they tell us here, they don't tell us there. They act here, they don't act there. There's an inconsistency. Tying it back, walking it back to the Derek Jones issue, some of the survivors, complainants, are livid that Ray Sutton is now overseeing the Steve Wood issue because they blame Ray Sutton in their anger. Might be misdirected anger. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
For slow walking the Derek Jones case. Now, Ray Sutton denies this, but is Ray Sutton the right person to oversee the Steve Wood issue when there are questions raised in the Derek Jones affair of his ability to handle this properly?
Well, and here's how we can look at the difficulty of the situation the ACNA and its leadership has put itself in. The ACNA had a trial for Stuart Ruck, and the lead prosecutor quit when he saw what he considered to be misconduct within the courtroom. His assistant, Rachel Thibault, quit when she saw the same thing and had people in the ACNA headquarters access her private files. And she quit and also said very ironically at this point, there's corruption at all levels of the ACNA. Now looking back even further, kind of hindsight 2020 here, she may be more right than she knows. Because I had a conversation with 3 people of high distinction. I don't have permission to use their names. One may do an interview with me next week. And I said, is there a bishop in the ACNA that I can trust? Nobody could come back with a name of a person that I could trust. And I'm like, well, and I offered up names. Said, yeah, maybe him. I mean, I have a couple that I know I can trust, but the fact that these prominent people within the ACNA can't come back with an answer because some people have skeletons in their closet is very difficult for me to comprehend when you think about what Rachel said. Where the corruption is at all levels. So I don't know how the ACNA gets itself out of this. I don't think it can without a little bit of restructuring. So, and the first thing, Kevin's first thing, get rid of these NDAs. No church should have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. You take them off your former employees right away. We need transparency. We need to find out what's wrong so we can fix it. And if you're not going to let people talk to the people who know what's wrong, you'll never have a fix. That's not how this works. You're a church. Act like one. So,
people are writing to you and to me, Kevin, telling us stuff about other bishops. Some of it I can sort of say, okay, I suspect that somebody who is a friend of one of the bishops who's in trouble is trying to pee in the swimming pool and make it all bad for everybody. Mm-hmm. But here an accusation is made, well, do you know, this seminary was really a shady operation. And now this guy who was in charge of this seminary, well, you know what he's doing now. This sort of slander and innuendo and nastiness just is so destructive. That's why it comes back to what you're saying, Kevin, of transparency and honesty. Mm-hmm. Of saying, oh yeah, I made a mistake here and we can move on. But trying to cover up just never works.
Well, it shows that you're not operating as a church. A church operates on the very basics of grace, mercy, led into by forgiveness. I can't forgive you if you can't tell me what I need to forgive you for. Okay, I mismanaged this. Good. Let's be open about that. How can we set up a way for you not to mismanage it, and we can set up a course? Because you were transparent, I'm going to be transparent. I will forgive you in this, and we will once again be of one accord. That can't be done if we don't know what the hell's going on. So it's crazy. But yeah, we get lots of reports all the time, and it's going to be especially worse now because my guy's in charge. Look. We were praying for a anti-women's orders guy to be in charge, and he's in charge now, and he's on side. He is flawless because he's on my side. I wish it were that way. Now, that's one of the problems we had early on in the formation of the ACNA. We brought people who all had the same doctrine and opinion on certain topics, and that made them, in our eyes, ivory towers of righteousness and flawless, which is not true. I mean, these bishops had personality issues, quirks, and sins in their past and current that they needed to address, but because we never did background checks, because they were bringing in all their people into our church, we never did thorough investigations because they were bringing more people into the ACNA for us. We just, hey, he's got what we want. He's got parishioners, and we're going to add them to the ACNA. We're up to 125,000. Okay, great. So we need to. My first suggestion is all these dioceses out there who do not have a background check in your bishop. Now's your chance. All right. I think there's a total of 4 or 5 bishops in the all ACNA who've had a background check on them. That's got to change.
And maybe throw in a psych check too.
Psych check, yes. Just a quick search on Google for Anglican Inc. Hey, do this show up there? What else we want to cover with the Steve Woods story, George? I got the policy part. And I talked about how bad is it that 7 people went to the Washington Post and not trusting the system. That just shows how bad the system is, George. All right, so let's move on to our next story. The guy who made me wealthy, his name is Bill Gates. As many people know, for many years I ran a small IT company, and my primary job, now one set of my customers still watches the show, and they're going to know exactly what I say. One of the things I have people do before they call me for an IT issue is to reboot. You have a Windows product. Here's the contract. My company will support the IT for your company. We'll do your phone systems, your servers, your workstations, the whole system. But before you call with a problem, you need to reboot your workstation. Oh, we'll do that. Okay, sure. So they call, and me or one of my sub workers picks up the phone. First thing we asked is, did you reboot? Oh, yeah, sure we did. No, you didn't. Reboot. Oh, it's fixed now. So Bill Gates, because his stuff does not work, made me a ton of money. And this is all before Y2K. So, George, what did Bill Gates do that's all over the press in 2025?
Well, Bill Gates stepped off the climate bus this past week, and he left the churches and the greenie weenies holding his bags.
Yeah.
On October 29th, Bill Gates shared a letter where he said there are 3 truths about climate change. The first truth is that climate change is a serious problem, but it will not be, let me expand the screen so I can read the rest of it.
The end of civilization.
It will not be the end of civilization. Second, temperature is not the best way to measure our progress on climate. Global warming is not a thing that can be calculated. Health and prosperity, this is number 3, are the best defense against climate change. Economic development is the best defense against climate change. Now, climate advocacy groups who view the climate change as a existential threat, the Al Gores that if we don't do something, the polar bears will all have drowned by the year 2000, stuff like that. They are in panic mode because the smartest guy in the world, he and Elon Musk.
Richest, not smartest.
Richest, well, they like to think they're smart too, have jumped off the climate advocacy bus saying we need to realize that a great deal of the climate advocacy is hyperbole. Climate models aren't real. They don't work. Climate change may be a problem in some places. In other places, people have been saying for 30 years the Maldives Islands will be gone. The Maldives Islands are not gone. In fact, they're now expanding. What about these islands here? I don't know. But, throughout the course of history, waters rise, waters fall, not globally. Now, Donald Trump has entered the picture, and in his best Donald Trump way, I'll read you his tweet. I, parenthesis, we just won the war on climate change hoax. Bill Gates has finally admitted that he was completely wrong, all capital letters, on the issue. It took courage to do so. For that, we are all grateful. MAGA. And so Donald Trump is rubbing it in the face of the greenie weenies, who are basically now like, oh my God, Bill Gates has left us and Donald Trump is making us. Well, now, why is this a church issue?
Well,
how much money is the Church of England wasted on net zero? How much time has the Lambeth Conference wasted on climate issues and things of that nature? Kevin, you and I used to have a little routine that we'd talk about mosquito nets. That was the purpose of the Church of England, was to make sure there was no African without a mosquito net. Jesus Christ was secondary. Mosquito nets was necessary.
Well, the biggest thing that's happening here is now that the churches have a reason not to be forced to virtue signal. In fact, all millionaires and billionaires now can say, Bill Gates is going to save me $10 million a year in donations to Greenpeace or whatever, because I no longer have to virtue signal to be important to myself and to my followers. And now I hope that Bill Gates will correct himself on this artificial meat he's been making. It was Beyond Meat, or what, I forget what it was called. And because I know he's lost a lot of money in that adventure as well. And
Soylent Green, was that?
Yeah, it was a Soylent Green. Made up of old computer parts. So it's not people, it's computer parts. So I don't know. What happens now to the Greta Thunbergs of the world? Because they can't operate without the money from the billionaires and the people who want to have that golden heart. I don't know.
Well, when a church chases after the spirit of the age, it becomes an orphan pretty soon.
Yeah.
Or words to that effect. And the Church of England, the Episcopal Church, the Lambeth Conference, the Anglican Church of Canada have all run after the spirit of the age. Church of England really into this climate stuff, and now the smart people are saying, no, it's not what you think it is. Episcopal Church's last general convention said, children can make a decision on being transgender or not. That like a 5-year-old can decide whether they want to be castrated. Mm-hmm. And now, where have we moved? Well, nobody in their right mind thinks that's a reasonable position.
No, because we've now had these large studies of thousands of people, and we found out, you know what the solution is to gender dysphoria, George? There is a solution that works 98% of the time. It's called puberty.
And wait, it shall pass.
Lord.
But in other words, the churches, the Western churches, are so keen to jump on whatever bandwagon is out there. And then we have our African counterparts is in our own churches who, oh, look, they'll give us money to do X, Y, and Z. They won't give us money to spread the gospel. They won't give us money to fight militant Islam. They won't give us money to address the needs that we think are important. But hey, they'll give us $1 million to set up solar windmills and farms or whatever to do this, that, and the other. The churches as an institution have been so corrupted in this modern world by the conventional wisdom at the expense of teaching the basic truths of Jesus Christ.
Well, at a certain point, the church, especially here in the West, has got Jesus phobia. They don't know what the gospel is. When they hear it, they're afraid of it. And they certainly don't want to be associated with it when they're out there trying to do their missions. We can't really operate and function correctly if we give this gospel message. That makes us sound like colonizers. And we certainly as a church are not colonizers. So one of those big messes that I hope we can fix. Let's fix the ACNA first, but then we'll tackle the rest of the Western church. Now, my biggest issue with having a report on these big issues in the ACNA and GAFCON in the last month, 6 weeks, is that important stories get left behind, George. And the next story we're going to report on is one of the most important stories of the last decade that we have not reported faithfully because we've had to waste our time on the distractions provided by the corruption in the ACNA. So moving on now, we're going to talk about the massacres that's been happening in Nigeria, South Sudan, Congo, parts of Rwanda over the last 10 years. Donald Trump, on Twitter, X, has threatened Nigeria over inaction over Christian massacres. He released a tweet saying the U.S. may now have to step in to save the innocent. What? Go to war?
Well, this is a wonderful statement, but you need to be able to understand hyperbole. I very much doubt you'll ever see a single 18-year-old American foot soldier on the ground in Kaduna. But what you will see is President Trump browbeating and humiliating the Nigerian government to take firm action to prevent the continued slaughter of Christians at the hands of Muslims, Boko Haram, Fulani tribesmen, the Islamic State of West Africa, and all these other different groups, as well as criminal bands that have jumped onto the bandwagon. 120,000 Christians have died in the last decade. And the Biden administration removed Nigeria as a country as particular concern of religious freedom. And then after Trump had put it on the list because of the persecution of Christians, Trump has put it back on the list of countries with particular concern over religious freedom. And now he's saying to the government of Nigeria, look, you guys get your act together. We know you're corrupt. We know you're crooked. The talk has long been that the army, which is Muslim dominated, the top ranks, wants chaos, wants corruption, so that they can step back in and say that only the army can save Nigeria. Mm-hmm. That's something I've heard for 25, 30 years.
Well, we saw the same in Sudan as well, but Sudan had to have a civil war and split. There's now North Sudan and South Sudan. Are we going to see a split in Nigeria as well? Because the money's still in the north.
Yeah. Well, the army's in the north, the money's in the south, because all the oil's in the south. But there are some church leaders, including Anglican bishops, who are saying, "Oh, no! It's not a religious war; it's a tribal war. It's an economic war. This, that, and the other." And then we have other religious leaders. Who was the former GAFCON general secretary?
Oh, geez. Not Ben Kwashi. Ben Kwashi?
Ben Kwashi.
There you go. Yeah. I got one.
Who can give you firsthand testimony that this is exactly what Donald Trump's describing. So in some quarters of Nigeria, there's elation that somebody is going to stand up for them. Other quarters, there's anger that this is an insulting to Nigeria's sovereignty, or this is we have to be seen to support our government. But at the end of the day, I think people would need to realize, just like I don't think we'll ever see an American Marine on the ground in Caracas or Maracaibo in Venezuela, we'll never see an American soldier, but you will see planes fly overhead and Donald Trump make noises.
Well, what a great way to contrast leading from behind, which Obama said was a way to lead, and leading from the forefront, which Trump has done. I remember so vividly Michelle Obama standing in front of a camera holding a little hashtag piece of paper that said Coney 2012, because she knew she had enough influence to drive the information of who this Coney guy was, dictate out of what Nigeria, right?
No, Uganda. He was Lord's Resistance Army.
Yeah. And so she knew by holding that little sign up on Twitter or whatever she put it on, I guess on Facebook at the time, that would end this. And that's because she could lead from behind just by drawing attention to it. Here, when Donald Trump wants to do it, he will call to Twitter, but he will also invite the president of South Africa to the White House. And he will say to the president of South Africa, your country is demanding that they get to kill the boar. And the president of South Africa says, no, that's not true at all. Show the tape. And so, I mean, that's a completely different type of diplomacy. And I say that because 4.5 weeks later, we never heard a peep about killing the boar.
Well, the situation in Nigeria is an Anglican priest in Kaduna and his wife were kidnapped and, I believe, murdered by Muslim extremists this past weekend. And the thing is, Kevin, one of the end jokes of this show is we don't do many Indian corruption stories because we'll always have a new one next week. We don't do many African massacres of Christians because we'll always have a new one next week. And I hate to be that jaundiced, but, you know, this is a real term. I think it's like 30 Christians a day are being murdered. I think that was a number I saw.
Yeah, I saw the stats that 80% of all the Christian martyrs in the history of Earth have come from Nigeria only in the last 20 or 30 years. You know?
So you may dislike President Trump. You may not like his come over.
I don't like him.
All this and that, but I believe the man is standing in the right spot on this issue of the persecution of Christians, saying to the Nigerian government, if you can't fix it, I'll have to do it.
I don't like him, but I can't disagree that he's done some strident things that I did not expect him to be able to do. Shut down the border. Okay. I have family members who voted for him because he was going to shut down the border, and they are pleased as could be. I have friends who voted for him because he was going to change the economy. And somehow, beyond reason, the tariffs are working. I did not expect that. Now, you guys know out there, you've watched the show long enough. I complained about him. I don't like him. My good friend here likes him a little more than I do. But there's some success going on. So it's strange.
Well, this is sort of segues into the next story, because Donald Trump and his vice president have been giving the advice to the British government over, they've got to sort of step up and act on free speech, on crime and immigration. This past weekend, I've been hearing from people, some of our viewers, that a tipping point has been reached in the UK. The train stabbings on the train to Huntington in Cambridgeshire. 9 people were severely injured by a black man who ran down the train, stabbing people. Bishop of Ely offered his condolences. We're deeply saddened by the tragic incident. We pray for all this and that. Local churches who had people affected offered prayers, but nothing from Cottrell, nothing from Mullally, nothing from the National Church offices. And when they do talk about the immigration problem, it's one of platitudes about diversity is our strength, and we're a better church. We're a better church in London because we're the only diocese that's growing. It's because you have all these immigrants from Africa who are worshiping there. White Englishmen are not worshiping in your churches anymore. The talk is that England is headed for a civil war. Now, I don't think that's practical because you guys don't have guns.
Yeah, no guns. And no. You're all gentlemen. I don't know. Are you gonna insult people to death? That's our war. We're just gonna insult you. And now, hold on. An Englishman can insult you without you knowing. You'll go home and start crying. I don't know what he said, but it's starting to hurt now. So there is that.
So the Church of England has been conspicuously absent on the immigration and crime issue, unless it is in favor of immigrants. Mm-hmm. So Rose Hudson Wilkin, the Bishop of Dover, a real character she is, has been so vociferous in praising immigrants, making Britain a better place, all this and that. Only Philip North has defended the rights of Englishmen to put up an English flag on a lamppost. And he's saying that this outbreak of patriotism you're seeing are the English people, the working men and women of England, the English of England, saying, this is my country. I can't flee to Dubai like the upper classes. I can't move to Florida. I have to work. I want a country I can leave to my children. And when Afghan and Somalis are 20 times more likely to commit a sex crime than a native-born Englishman, or 80 times more likely to commit a rape, and these people are still being led into the country without being vetted, you have to ask yourself, people in England are asking themselves, is this government for us or against us? Yeah. And the Church of England, you have to ask, are you for us or against us? And so far, the Church of England's pretty much been against you.
Well, they certainly aren't supporting Christians with Christian ideas. On a different topic, today Tommy Robinson was found innocent by a court in the UK for not sharing his password to his phone, which he was accused of keeping terrorist secrets on.
I hadn't heard that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I saw that this morning. I'm like, well, there goes the Civil War. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Now, was it by a judge or by a jury? Did they say?
I think it was a judge who did it. Because the judge he came really down hard on the police by saying, you set this guy up. And so maybe there's one good judge left in all of Britain. Maybe one. And Tommy Robinson found him today.
Oh.
But yeah, that's all it takes too, George. You see the tide turning here, the pendulum in America, because of the judges. Every once in a while you get assigned an Obama judge and you're screwed. It's all over. This federal judge is going to come down hard on me, or you get a Trump judge or an old Bush judge, and you'll get away with something. Who knows? Let's talk about our last topic. You wrote a hard piece Oh wait, which one do I have? Typing. Okay.
Cardinal Koch.
Okay, we'll do that one. I thought there was a different story here. Cardinal Koch speech about Malawi's election. We have had a lot of press recently here in America finding out the weak links within GAFCON. As we talked about before, the Global Anglican Communion has formed thanks to the Archbishop of Rwanda and the help of Sydney and other places, and it has a lot of momentum behind it. However, there's other media here in America who are trying to find the weak spots in that. Who really supports this new Global Anglican Communion? And they found people who's like, no, we're going to stay with the Canterbury Communion because we're not sure of yet. And I'm okay with that. You sometimes you have to earn something new. The ACNA had to earn it. And the Global Anglican Communion is going to have to earn this as well. And it's okay if you feel safer in the old communion for a little while before you jump ship. But to see the Roman Catholic frickin' Church jump ship 3 weeks after and say, we want to go with GAFCON, I'm like, oh, Lord, George, how do we even tell our people this?
Cardinal Koch, who is the head of the dicastery on inter-Christian relations, gave a speech in Germany. Mm-hmm. And it's in German. It was translated into English on katholisch.de, the German Catholic news agency. And the Vatican recognizes the GAFCON split means Canterbury is no longer a suitable dialogue partner when talking to Anglicans. Whoa.
I need a heart pill.
What? Stop. And Koch puts this into context. He says the GAFCON split is not over Malali being a woman. Here's the Catholic Church being more truthful than the Episcopal News Service is, which no surprise there. The split is not over her being a woman, but her abandoning traditional teaching, says Koch. And because of this, the Catholic Church has to ask ourselves, here's the quote translated into English, who will we dialogue with in the future if the Anglican world community is so divided? In other words, the Anglican Center at Rome is a little outpost staffed by Canterbury loyalists. You saw all these ecumenical iterations things have overwhelmingly overrepresented by Canterbury and its followers. The Catholic Church has said, well, wait a second, 85% of the people who we think we're talking to repudiate this group, and only 15% are along with it. So who should we be talking to? So, hint, hint, GAFCON Primates Council, get on the speed dial to Cardinal Koch. Archbishop Mabanda, give him a call, because the Catholics are saying as clearly as possible, we're happy to talk to more than one Anglican group. This is a small story in the sense that it won't be above the fold of the Washington Post like a sex scandal with an archbishop. But in the bigger picture of things, this is probably the most important story of the week.
This is an important story of the decade, maybe since the formation of GAFCON, as far as recognition of all the hard work they did.
Jules Gomez, we've published a few of his pieces in the past. He now has become a Catholic and he lives in Rome and is a reporter there. He's still a bit of a gadfly. He's written a very interesting article that has been picked up in Catholic traditionalist circles, where basically he's put forward the thesis that even though the Vatican 125 years ago said Anglican orders are null and void, ever since Vatican II, the Catholic Church has essentially ignored that and treated Anglican orders as being valid. And including most recently with Leo, the Pope Leo and King Charles and the English bishops visiting, so that they are accorded the honor and dignity of ordained priests and ordained bishops. Now, this is not a change of the actual documentation, but the Gomez's thesis is that the Catholic Church now isn't bound by words, it's bound by its praxis or actions. So what we're seeing is, the Gomez thesis is that we're having the creeping acceptance of the validity of Anglicans. We also have the recognition that the Anglicans who we had been talking with, we really shouldn't be bothering with. And we should be talking with the Anglicans with whom we may share moral and doctrinal and issues, rather than somebody who we can agree with on the real presence, or somebody who can agree with moral issues, or somebody who we can agree with on abortion and life issues, things that we can walk together with on the issues of homosexuality. Why are we talking to these people with whom we have nothing in common, yet we're ignoring these, and at the same time we're accepting them in our household as no longer strangers, but sort of estranged brothers? Mm-hmm. Fascinating time.
It is. Now, next week, we're going to talk about something about Mary that came up today, but that's more because we're at the end of the episode, George. We're 57 minutes in, probably longer after I edit it. I'm sorry, guys. It's a long episode when Archbishop Steve Wood has to step aside and have this type of reporting. However, this is not a bad day for the church. It is a good day for the church when you have transparency. It's a good day when you have accountability, and it's a good day when you have a system that's used. What Archbishop Wood, guilty or innocent here, there's a system. And if they use it effectively, we can, at the end of this, be proud Christians and not mournful. So please have a good perspective about a church that does the right thing. You know, if they don't do the right thing, you out there in the audience can complain. George and I will complain. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 940 of Anglican Unscripted.